Once starting to not minding, the reflection will happen accordingly. The mind linking to mind accordingly. No grasping for the non-grasping itself. Translate well. It has to be in the way that there is dispersing at the same time. Then there will be the force that penetrates through thoroughly. Dispersing in the way that the non-grasping doesn't grasp for itself. That is the brightness that is shining through. Sinking in anything, it becomes realms of existence. Because whenever they drown in anything, when they die, if they drown in the computer, in the games, wherever they die, they stuck there, they become Asurakai, the demons. Most of the time, they fall into these realms of existence as a Asurakai. They cannot move anywhere else. They die underground or in the water. They stuck there. That is the life that is sinking, drowned, preoccupied with whatever they are drowning. They cannot go anywhere. They become spirits that is stuck at that place that they die. If there is earthquake, they will be underground. The spirit cannot come up from the ground. Therefore, awaken out in the way with this regarding, without grasping for the non-grasping itself. Disengage without grasping for disengagement itself. Disengage in the way that the non-grasping doesn't grasp for itself. Mai in the way that doesn't grasp for the non-grasping itself. This will be unwinding, discarding itself. That is brightening. These kind of societies in this generation is so unfortunate. They are just burdens of the minds, always focusing, drowning in the games, especially computer, especially games. They don't play in moderation. It just creates trouble for them. Disengage in the way that the non-grasping doesn't grasp for itself. This will unwind out like flowers blossom out and discard its blossoming state. This is liberation in itself, not in the way of maintaining. Mai in the way of non-grasping doesn't grasp for itself. Blossoming out of itself, it discards itself. Dispersing in the way that the non-grasping doesn't grasp for itself. Open up in the way of the non-grasping doesn't grasp for itself. Don't maintain, don't concentrate. Hard working too much is not good. When you get old, you just go to hospitals. You have no more energy. You have to always take care of your health because your hard working has been used up already. That energy is used up because you are quickly using up the energy, therefore is finishing. The body becomes worn out more than old age. Work hard in the way that is in moderation, so that the energy can be always there. Too much comfortable also is not the way. Just assume up. Assume up and it's bygone in itself. It's temporary assuming up. That which is not even know itself. No is not even know itself. Therefore, everything is just assumed up temporarily. In the way that is the bygone, be bygone, temporarily assuming up. We have to continue to bless. Because there are new generations. All beings have always climbing up, There are always new generations because they are the same attributes, ending according to each generation. Brahma realms also will end from one generation to the next. What you see is the recent generation. The old ones, they already ended. There are so many in samsara. There are many forms of perfection. Therefore, let's help through ending continuously. The blessing has been for a lengthy time. See, since the first Buddha era is uncountable time. And each Maha Buddha also has been here for uncountable time. Their period of time are more than the period of time of the Brahma realm or angel realms. They bless for a long time, longer than the generations of the Brahma realm or the angel realms. The Mahaparami has been here for longer time than any realms of existence. They have been here as always, still holding space to purify through the extinction and the emptiness. Samsara just realize or not. Some can, some cannot. The great compassion doesn't involve time, but the beings involve time because they are conditioned by their karma. Their karma fixes time. But the great compassion doesn't involve time, has no conditions by time. Not attached to the non-attachment itself doesn't involve time. No grasping for the non-grasping itself either. Time is destined by karma, by delusion, by delusive attachment. The great compassion has no timing. However, is compromised as the words forever. Actually, it's not conditioned by time. It doesn't involve time. Not attached to the non-attachment itself has nothing to do with time. It's not conditioned by it. The great compassion exists because samsara exists. Without samsara, there is no great compassion to be assumed up. Samsara is the factor for the great compassion to exist. Without samudaya, without suffering, the great compassion will not be assumed up. Without samsara, without beings and the suffering of the beings, the great compassion will not exist. So long as the beings are there, the great compassion still be assumed up. If there will be no more beings, samsara will not be assumed up. Thought has frame, has boundaries in themselves. That which has nothing to do with thoughts. When you use thoughts, that which has nothing to do with knowing. When you use knowing, it's impossible to reach it. That which has nothing to do with knowing or thoughts. When you use thought and knowing, it's impossible to reach it because thought and knowing has limitations in themselves. Therefore, if you ask, how can I know? It's impossible to know if you use knowing. You must listen to the essential quotes regarding that which has nothing to do with knowing or not knowing. Be thorough. Therefore, listen to that which has nothing to do with the mind, that which has nothing to do with knowing or not knowing, that which has nothing to do with understanding or not understanding, that which has nothing to do with titi, opinions and meanings. Listen to that which has nothing to do with grasping for the listening. In this way, it will purify through the emptiness directly. Listen to that which has nothing to do with the grasping for the listening. If there is grasping, it becomes samsara of wisdoms. Titi. Within wisdoms and memories, they are samsara in themselves. Let's be aligned with the essence, the true essence of cutting deluded knowing or the enlightenment. That's why just listen. Listen and use the reminders from the listening. Because that's the essence, direct essence. All the terminologies are the direct essence. For example, uninvolved within the uninvolvement itself is Nirodha and Nibbana. That's the essence, direct essence. They are terminologies that has direct essence. Mai from Mai itself is also the direct essence of cutting the cutting itself. Essence of the enlightenment. This has nothing to do with the mind. Whatever that has said here has nothing to do with the mind. It has nothing to do with the mind or the practice of the mind. Cut off the burdens of practicing the mind right away. Otherwise, it's going to be a concern in practices. Let's end this kind of burden. And use that which is not the mind to purify samsara continuously, dissolve samsara continuously, dissolve the delusion of samsara continuously. What is it that is not the mind? No is not know itself. That's it. Discard the discarding itself. Let go of the letting go itself. The mind is all about karma totally. If you use the mind, then you're using that karma and karmic difficulties, the result of the karma, karmic retributions, mental karma, process of the mind. The whole process of the mind is mental karma. It's karma. With using the mind, then it becomes the circling of karma and its retributions. It's gonna drag a long way. Therefore, listen to that which has nothing to do with the mind, which is everything is uninvolved within the uninvolvement itself. That is ceasing directly, ending directly. All about the mind, mindfulness, concentration, contemplation, insight, special insights. These are the minds. Therefore, we must have terminologies that purify themselves. The mind or titi is terminology, but they grasp for themselves. That's why they become samsara within terminologies. Therefore, we have to assume terminologies that purify themselves. These are the conclusion. Because there are samsara in terminologies. Studying and practicing is the same thing. Pariyat, the study, is actually the assumed up of terminologies. Why is assumed up? It's become a practice in itself. If it's not in the way of discarding itself, it will just proceed onwards in the way of samsara in terminologies, in samsara of the practice, samsara of studying. Terminologies and practices are one. It's the same thing. Pariyat, studying, learning, acknowledging, practicing that. It is terminology in itself. Banyat and pariyat is the same thing. Terminologies and studying is the same thing. Knowing is the studying itself. Studying is pariyat. The knowing is the practicing in itself. Therefore, it's impossible to separate it. It's the same thing. Pariyat and manyat and patibat is the same thing. Studying, practicing is the same thing as terminologies. Practicing only karma. Samsara practicing only karma. Practicing only karma. Knowing is the practice in itself. When there is the practice, when there is the usage of knowing, it is the practice in itself. It's the same thing, which is called karma. mental karma, process of karma from the mind. Therefore, just listen to that which has nothing to do with karma. Listen to that which has nothing to do with the mind. Listen to that which has nothing to do with the practice, which has nothing to do with the attempt to begin or to end. That is uninvolved within the involvement itself. After listening, it will give ending to the attempt to end and to begin and to end, which is called terminologies that purify themselves. Terminologies end within themselves. They purify themselves. There are so many generations that has ended. Samsara is a lot. There are many levels. New heaven, new Brahma realms, new angel realms, new human realms, new realms arising. Therefore, the great compassion has to always purify all these realms, all these karmic realms. Everything is cutting within itself, sees within itself. When using all these terminologies, we have nothing to do with knowing or not knowing automatically. Each time that there is a usage of these terminologies, if we have nothing to do with knowing or not knowing, if learning all that, knowing or not knowing, if we just involve with avijja, vichya or avijja, nibbana has nothing to do with involvement or uninvolvement. Uninvolved even within the involvement itself. Nibbana has nothing within involvement or uninvolvement. Uninvolved within the involvement itself has nothing within involvement or uninvolvement. This will purify the samutai overlaying knowing. It will not become delusion within knowing. If you listen and talk about knowing, somehow there will be just a delusion in the knowing. Listen to that which has nothing to do with knowing or not knowing. Instead, what's the result? It will purify the delusion in the knowing. It will purify the delusion in knowing, which is the samutai that overlaying the knowing. That which has nothing to do with the involvement itself will purify the delusion in the knowing. It will not become samutai within knowing, within the delusion of the knowing. It could be called nirodha or nibbana. You can call it or not. There is no condition whether you call it nibbana or nirodha. No condition to call it at all. Knowing indifferently doesn't yet ceasing the samutai. Because it is the subtle samutai in there, in knowing indifferently. Involved within the involvement itself has no conditions, whether it's knowing or not knowing, stillness or indifference. Uninvolved within the involvement itself has no conditions for anything at all. No other meanings further, whether it's still or not still, indifferent or not, ordinary or not, being empty or not, nibbana or not nibbana, no further meanings from there. Uninvolved within the involvement itself, no other meanings further, whether it's nibbana or not, ending or not ending, being empty or not. Ending is right there. Samsara is always here. They are derived from forming up and then being carried on to the assume up. The Arahants also use the knowing, but they don't have delusion in it. They use knowing without preference in using it, because uninvolved within the involvement itself, not attached to the non-attachment itself. That which has nothing to do with reasons and consequences, causes. It has nothing to do, unlike knowing, because there is a cause in itself. That which has nothing to do with causes or results has nothing to do with knowing or not knowing. But knowing still have causes and results in itself. Therefore, that which is uninvolved within the uninvolvement itself has no conditions with understanding or not at all. It's not conditioned by understanding or not understanding. Uninvolved within the uninvolvement itself is like this. It's not classified as a path or the result of a path. It's not classified as the path to the enlightenment. This is the conclusion directly through Nirodha and Nibbana. It's not classified as a path or a result of a path. Use the reminders to purify onwards simultaneously. Then it will purify internally and externally simultaneously. That is the great compassion. The reminders has to be used simultaneously with samsara. They are reminders that purify themselves, not with a purpose for anything. The reminders that purify themselves is proceeded with everything simultaneously. It's not about options, whether it's internal first or external first, not before nor after. It's moving simultaneously at the same time. The habit is the karmic difficulty of the usage of the mind. Karmic habit is the karmic difficulties of the process of the mind. It is actually the mind itself. Listen only and end accordingly and bless accordingly is the same thing. Just use the reminders. Listen and use the reminders. Ending and blessing will be happening accordingly. Any sentences can be used. They can purify everything. Forgiveness statement is to purify karma, is lessen the karma, lessen the gross karma. So when ahosi, even the ahosi itself as well. Ahosi, purifying the ahosi itself. The forgiveness purifies itself. This is the essence of the great compassion also. It softens the karmic difficulties of samsara. Reminders that purify themselves. Use the reminders that doesn't grasp for the reminders themselves. Don't use reminders on and on that become samsara in themselves. This is the arising that purifies itself. Mai from Mai itself, that is Mai purifying Mai itself, Mai that ends itself. This is not to reject this and that, cutting this and that, on and on, it becomes the becoming. That which has nothing to do with letting go or not. When you letting go, it's become the becoming in the letting go of this and that. The letting go is the becoming itself. So that which has nothing to do with letting go or not. If you let go, if you act on it, it becomes the becoming within the letting go. You can't read it. You cannot read the situation. The reminders are the great compassion. Reminders that purify themselves. Everything is let go of the letting go itself. These are the reminders of the great compassion, purifying through the extinction and emptiness for samsara simultaneously. There is refinements of the essence while you're doing the translation. What is not sharp, then it will become sharper. If it's ambiguous, it's impossible to translate the essence. So when you do the translation, it will be sharper automatically. Continue onwards, you'll be more fluent. Discard the discarding itself, no grasping for the non-grasping itself, more fluent. The translation will be more fluent as well, accordingly. That's why you need to just translate every sentence. In the past, you just choose what to eat. Which one you want to eat, you eat. That's the past. But now, every sentence. Otherwise, you will not be more skillful. Because the more you do translation, the more you say it. The essence is right there, automatically. That's why when they use the reminders, the cutting happens in itself. The essence are given simultaneously with the reminders. The same as when you do translation, the essence becomes right while translating because it's direct translation. Otherwise, it's impossible to translate either. Once there is direct translation, it becomes the essence directly as well. When you say out loud, sometimes for the reminders, there is a force. But when you do it mentally, it is to be given for samsara as well. You must have intentions to bless. Use the reminders intentionally. Mai from Mai itself with all things. Then there will be a force for the blessing. If you use reminders vaguely, there is no force. It's just like that. The force must be derived from the great compassion through the blessing. No grasping for the non-grasping itself has to be meant for everything. Use these reminders to purify samsara. Then there will be a force, mighty force. That's why when Hluangพ่อleads towards blessing, because there will be power to bless, and then you can use it further on. Use the reminders to purify like this continuously. These are the reminders that purify samsara. In the end, you will be one with the translation and the essence. There is no vagueness and not on the surface. It's the essence. Otherwise, it's impossible to translate.